Hi, I'm Virginia Jacobson, and we're going to talk about the pathway of lactate as it is produced through anaerobic glycolysis in the muscles. It moves to the liver and then back to the muscles again. The four basic steps that we're going to go over is the anaerobic glycolysis, the diffusion of lactate from the muscle cells into the bloodstream to the liver, gluconeogenesis, which occurs in the liver, and then the diffusion of glucose into the bloodstream back to the muscles where the process begins again. To begin with, the muscles need energy, and they get that energy through the breakdown of glucose called glycolysis. As you can see, there are 2 ATP and 2 pyruvate that are produced in the process of glycolysis. When there is a sufficient amount of oxygen, the pyruvate is able to complete the energy cycle. But during anaerobic glycolysis or intense exercise where there is not a sufficient amount of oxygen, the muscle need of energy surpasses the amount of energy that is produced. During this process, especially in the type 2 muscle fibers, and because of their lower metabolic rate that they can synthesize oxygen, there is a high amount of hydrogen ions that are released, and it produces a significant amount of lactate. This intense exercise causes the pyruvate to be produced faster than it can be oxidized and used. So the pyruvate helps to maintain the homeostasis of the acidity of the muscles by removing the hydrogen ions which form with the lactate. And this is actually a dissociation of the lactic acid. So during intense exercise, the pyruvate can't keep up with the removal of the hydrogen ions, and the acidity rises in the muscles. So as you can see, during glycolysis, we have a pyruvate, we have a hydrogen, and we have an NADH. During that intense exercise, or the anaerobic, where there isn't enough oxygen, you have the lactate dehydrogenase that comes in, and it combines with the pyruvate and the NADH, where the pyruvate takes the hydrogen, and then takes the hydrogen from the NADH, and over here you see this is where the lactate is produced. So during this whole process of the intense exercise and the production of the hydrogen ions and the lactate, the increase in this hydrogen ions is a term that they call the lactate threshold, or another term is OLA, where the lactate accumulation surpasses the muscle's ability to disperse the lactate and causes the muscles to fatigue. So the body will try to buffer these effects through chemical and physiological mechanisms such as hyperventilation, pulmonary ventilation, and the renal system. So as the lactate accumulates and the buffers cannot compensate, due to the higher ratio of the NADH and NAD plus of the lactate in the cytosol of the skeletal muscles, there is an isoenzyme, LDH, that comes in and helps to facilitate the transportation of the lactate into the bloodstream, and this is represented here. The blood then passes into the liver, where the hepatocytes, or the liver cells, facilitate the process of converting the lactic acid, as you see here, to pyruvate. The enzyme lactate dehydrogenase also facilitates and aids with this conversion, and this whole thing is called the Cori cycle. Now in the liver, you have the gluconeogenesis, and that is actually the opposite of glycolysis. Glycolysis is the oxidation or the breakdown of glucose, and gluconeogenesis is the synthesis where they produce glucose. As the glucose is produced, it leaves the liver and enters the bloodstream and returns to the muscles where it is oxidized again, and it begins that process over again. During the recovery after intense exercise and when our oxygen is available, the lactate can be reoxidized to pyruvate. And that is the basic cycle.